Right, hello there. Hold on a second. So it seems YouTube doesn't like you streaming without setting up one of the settings that not privacy settings, one of the age restriction settings. So you have to go through all of that in order to stream. I'm sure there's an automated way of doing it. Anyway, so today we're going to take a look at the toolkit again. IMVU Studio Toolkit. Hi Mesa. I'm going to take a look at the toolkit again. And poses because got an interesting question. It's that one. Yeah. So there used to be an issue with the old files, the old starter files, that if you so there used to be an issue that this is the original starter file for Blender 2.8 and above. There used to be an issue that if you moved female 03 master root. So if you moved this black bone when you did your pose, so you were making an animated pose and you moved that, it would cause problems with the avatar when the XAF, when that was converted from the FBX, it would cause problems that would corrupt the pose, because this bone represents the origin point of the avatar, and generally speaking it's not supposed to be moved, or we shouldn't. In the past, if we moved it, it caused problems, but that meant you couldn't do, well, the way that you would do poses that let's say the avatar had to rotate around an axis like so, you would use pelvis node, which is this bone that sticks out of the back. You'd have to use that to rotate the entire avatar. You wouldn't rotate the black bone, female 03 master root, the root bone, because that caused problems. But in the toolkit, that seems to be accommodated for. In that this rig shape, bone shape, that represents the pelvis bone, but we can't move that the same way that we would do pelvis node, because it's rigged up in a completely different way. But we can now move what is effectively the root bone of the avatar and export the animation that results from that without it causing issues. So I'm guessing that this bone is somehow tied to pelvis node, and that allows us still to move the avatar without it causing any problems. So this moving ordinarily would have caused an issue, but that seems to be fixed with the toolkit. So yes, we can now make animated poses that move the avatar. So the avatar can move from its spot, so it's no longer stuck there. We can move it all over the place. And to prove that, let's open Studio. Hang on, just checking all the windows to make sure they are playing. Right, yes, so Studio. So that is that animation just brought in orientation. So the avatar will move now. Which is very cool. I mean, obviously we're just doing a jump here, so the avatar's just doing that, but we should be able to move it in all sorts of directions now that we can do this. So let's do a simple little animation. Right, so new general, we're going to reset the scene. Don't save. View, sidebar, tool tab, animation tool. So this is the animation tool. I'm going to enable auto key, so it drops in the keyframes for us by default. And we're just going to create a simple sequence where we can move the root arrow thingy majig, what's I'm gonna call it. I'm going to insert a base key, so add key. So that's, we've got that selected and it's just dropped a keyframe into the timeline. So let's move the slider to 30. Use the widgets. Just going to move that, hold control to snap to the grid, to there, and it's automatically dropped in keyframe for us. Let's move this to 60. We're going to move that, hold control to there. Again, it's dropped in a keyframe. We'll move to 90. Do the same thing again. And then 120. That brings us back and control to there. So if we set the duration, set the length to 120, and then just play that, we just get the avatar doing that. So right now, all we're doing is changing its location. So let's save this. Save as Avatar Toolkit root test 1. And we can export this and see what that does. So make sure our armature or the rig is selected. And then in the export tools, we just click the export button. Export. So that's, it would be good to save this. Oh, the archive, you mean, Maisie? Mesa? Yeah, all the streams, all the live streams are archived, so you can go back and see them, watch them. And I'm also uploading later on the high-res version, the HD version. Right, so that's saved our file. It's done the thing where it needs to create the action. So, Studio. Let's create a new project. Speaking of which, what was this derived from? Info. Where does it give us that information? I'm sure it was in here somewhere. Oh yes, there we go. So we've just derived it from the empty mood, just for simplicity's sake. Right, so new project. PID 10,945,930. Empty mood. Drive. So that's the empty mood. Load in our FBX. What did we call this? Oh, let's close that. Toolkit root test. Root test 1. Open. So it'll go through the, so this is the preview, so we're now importing. Setup FBX. This stuff's okay. Next. No materials, obviously. There's our animation. Review. Import. So it's imported the sequence. So component, action, create new action. So we're clicking on the plus and then editing all the stuff over here. Stars.idle, uppercase I, new ensemble, asset, so click the drop down, there is our sequence, frame 1 to 120, infinite loop 0, apply, and then preview. And there is our, let's add the orientation widget so we can see so the avatar is now moving its location. So let's add so this is where it gets tricky. So the exporter switches us into object mode. So make sure mode selector or context editing. So we want to be in pose mode. So select the armature or the rig and switch to pose mode. So what we need to do so frame 29 Going to do a bit of precision editing here. Item. Going to change the coordinates numerically by typing the values. Whoops. There we go. So we've created a frame on 29, because on 30 we want the avatar to turn. So hull control snap to the grid. But what we need to do at frame 29 is reset that. So rotate that back. So we've got a quick rotate so the avatar is facing the direction it's going to go. Blink. So it's going to rotate back to the position it was at. So need to place a frame at 59 and position that numerically. And then 30 is the, or 60 is the twist. Uh-oh. There we go. So now the avatar is twisting back to face the way that it was originally. So we want to, when we're rotating, we want to rotate around the same axis and same direction. So we're going counterclockwise this way. So we have to go 89 counterclockwise. Face 1 and 80. And at frame 90 counterclockwise, and then one turn more, another 90. Because you have to make sure that you are going in the same direction every time you turn. Because if you just flip the avatar around, in Blender, left and right is determined by negative and positive values. So negative 180 is not the same as positive 180, because negative 180 is actually, even though the avatar may end up facing the same way, so currently it's facing this way, if we were to do negative 180, the avatar would spin, I think it's anti-clockwise actually, but if we do positive or just standard 180, the avatar spins clockwise or whichever way it is, it spins the opposite direction. So make sure that when you are rotating, you're always rotating it in the same direction. So now this is where it gets confusing, because we've changed the orientation of the scene. So at 119, if we go, so let's do this from frame 1. So frame 1 turns, turns, turns. So we need to go anti-clockwise again. Now, so this seems counterintuitive because we're facing the wrong way. But right, so let's move this. So Alt click, that selects the column, and we can move this. So press the G key, just move that to 119, and then we'll insert the avatar facing that way. So if we play this, got the avatar facing the direction of the turn. So let's save this, save as, to and then export. So back to the toolkit, export again. Oops. So that's created a second version. Back into Studio. Close this one. Open a new project. Create PID 10,945,930. So import FBX, find the file, toolkit root test 2, open. Same process again. That's the preview. Set up FBX. Don't need to do anything here, so those are okay again. Next. Next. Review. Import. So it's brought in our animation. So component, actions, new action, starts dot idle, ensemble, asset. So frame 1 to frame 120, 0 loops, place, apply, preview. Oh, yeah, so hang on, inventory. Orientation. That's doing something very weird with the addition of the rotation. Interesting. So moving its position, so we're just doing an XYZ location change. That works, but adding rotation messes it up. That's very weird. Let's click on the rig. Close mode. I don't think. The time it takes to do that shouldn't make any difference, but let's. Five frames. So let's shift that to 30. Just do a little bit of juggling of the frames. So we don't need to This is the advantage of once you've got your keyframes marked into position, you don't necessarily need to repose the avatar if you want to change the behavior of the sequence. So we can see that we're changing the behavior of the turn or the rotation of the avatar just by moving the keyframes. Yeah, see, because let's do that again. See, so that's rotating back. So we have to rotate that back and then force it to rotate in the right direction. Now we've got this. So this is one of the problems with rotating things in Blender when we animate. So that's literally done a 360 in order to, so we'll have to reset that. 0 pose, 0 bone. That resets it. So this is one of the tricky parts of using Blender, is that, so when we were talking earlier about the negative and positive values determining the rotation of the avatar, or the rotation of objects in general, if you go over, so we're rotating past these midpoints, and sometimes what Blender will do is that as soon as you pass the threshold of the midpoint, what it's doing is it's not going 180 and then 181. It's then going, what is that? 179 minus 179, because you've gone over this threshold. And what that means is that Blender interprets that as a clockwise, let's say a clockwise rotation instead of a continuation of an anti-clockwise rotation. So what it'll do is it'll flip an object around and essentially invert the rotation that you were trying to do, because you've gone over that threshold. The thresholds are 0 and 180, because obviously 180 is facing the opposite direction to 0. So as soon as you cross those thresholds, Blender isn't looking at it from the point of view of you are now turning 181, 182, 183 degrees. You're actually now turning 79, 179, 178, 177. So you're now going into a negative value, which is why, Blender does this weird rotational flip halfway through certain rotational animations. And it can be pretty frustrating to fix. Because what it often means is adding more keyframes than might be necessary. So let's try this. Nope. So now, because we've put a midpoint in, we've now got the rotation in front of the midpoint. Delete that. And it can be pretty frustrating to fix. But it happens just because Blender doesn't do a full 360 degrees. It just does positive 180 for clockwise, minus 180 for anti-clockwise. And the rotation can be quite quick. Reset. So let's try that. So if this doesn't work, let's do a save as. I suspect need to get on IMVU to update the toolkit to accommodate rotational values. So let's try exporting this. We've got our export. New project, create, PID 10,945,930. import FBX. Route 3, open. Right, so setup, that's okay. There's the animation, import. Component, actions, oops, add stance.idle ensembles. So frame 1 to frame 120, 0. Apply. Let's actually also that's so bizarre. Let's add the orientation widget. Skeleton. Let's just switch to a darker. Darker room. Can't quite figure out what it's doing. So it's inverted. That's weird. So what it's doing, so these are our four corners, roughly speaking. So it's playing the sequences in a straight line from these four corners. So it's not only is it not doing, you know, this, it's also essentially inverted. So what it should be doing is, even if it's just going from A to B along our from our corners, it's inverted the, so they're now down here. That's kind of weird. We'll have to get the tool team on that. Have a look at that. So it looks like we're going to be limited, for the moment at least, to doing very simple movement animations like that, or let's close that one, or we're just, I say stuck with, we're just we can do standard positional animations that just go from A to B, but we can't do anything that where the avatar is rotating around a spot. So it looks like that's something that IMVU is going to need to fix or take a look at and see if they can fix it, because it's a rotational thing, and these rotating things is notoriously difficult to sort out in Blender or to accommodate when exporting the data from Blender to IMVU. But yes, we can save. Can at least do typical A/B jumps or avatar motion. So we can at least do that. That's going to be an interesting one to fix, to see if they can fix it. Would be interesting to see if anybody that's using 3D Studio Max can do those kinds of sequences, because that's what the dance animations are. Those have all sorts of twists and turns and what have yous in it, so it's obviously possible, but might be something that's kind of tricky to do because of the way that Blender works. So let's do new. Don't save. Animation Toolkit. Auto key. Add key. Right, so let's just do a silly. So G to move, R to rotate. Reset. This isn't how you would necessarily do this, but we'll do it just for the sake of Ministry's Silly Walks. I mean, it'd be kind of magic if you could actually walk like that. Add key. So that needs to duplicate first and second frames. First and last. 0 bone. That needs to 0. And also on the first frame, 0. It's like a steam engine. So let's save this file, save as. Save. Then export. Then Studio. Don't save. Don't save. New project. Assembling 945,930. And it won't be an issue, at least I wouldn't have thought it'd be an issue with using the empty mood versus the avatars. So 80 and 191. Import FBX. Toolkit, root test again. Setup FBX. There's the animation, import, component, action, new action, stance.idle, ensemble. Oh, frame duration. So what was it? 1, 2, 30. Infinite loops. Apply. Preview. Well, that works. Looks like a puppet on a string. So we can play with, let's just, rooms, darker room. Orientation widget. Yeah, so it's going to be an issue with the rotation values. So that's something that IMVU will need to look into. It's kind of bizarre though. Right, well, we'll call it quits there because we can't really do anything with this. I mean, we can create our AB animations. We can't rotate anything. So we'll have to get IMVU to have a look at that and see if they can fix it or see what's going on. So in the meantime, thanks for lurking, lurkers. Thanks for watching Aza. And we shall see you on the next one, which hopefully will be about creating an avatar. So that's using a number of sequences. So we'll create a number of animations or poses and then derive those onto an avatar. So that's 80 and 191, so the root avatars, and then create our own, well, avatar animation set. So we'll do that one in the next video or the next live stream. So we shall see you then. Bye for now.